Hello, and welcome to week 23 of the Sharing the Light broadcast. I'm Lance Dixon, and I want to thank you for tuning in. This week was one of those weeks where I found it challenging and difficult to really determine what I wanted to talk about. Last week, I had a great discussion on the power of humility. And this week, I was kind of going back and forth about what I wanted to share during this broadcast. I decided that I want to talk about sharing the light and how we go about doing that. Now, for those of you who have been following us, you know that every week we try to share something that's going to be uplifting and beneficial to the listeners. But one of the things we also need to do is share things that don't necessarily come from us, but from other organizations that are trying to make an impact on our society. This week, one of the groups that I am involved with is called the Las Vegas Brothers. We are a group of seasoned men from different walks of life. We've been meeting for a little over 4 or 5 years now, maybe even more. But we kind of lost track. So we recently decided to get back together and meet again. One of the things we talked about was embracing fathers. Now we know it's June and Father's Day is coming up in a couple of weeks, but we want to embrace fatherhood as a means of sharing knowledge with fathers. Now, I have a little bit of experience in this area because I was previously a fatherhood advocate and I ran a nonprofit organization, which I talked to you guys about previously, called Committed Fathers Alliance. So we're not necessarily trying to bring the Committed Fathers Alliance back to life. But what we do want to do is we want to support some of the same kind of services. And those kinds of services are sharing information that will help fathers. There are a couple of categories that fathers fall into. One is the father who is in the home and in a stable relationship with their children, but he still has some of the same challenges and struggles that all of us fathers have. A lot of it may be due to the fact that maybe he didn't have a good role model. The second category is the father who is separated from the mother of his children, whether they never got married or whether they got married and they ended up in a divorce. There are a lot of things that they need to know in order to actually deal with that situation a little bit better. I found myself in that category in one of my stages in life. There are a lot of mistakes I made, but I also learned a lot of valuable lessons. The third category is the father who may be a widow. He has a wife who has passed away, and now he's left to raise his children on his own. So, those are three categories of the fathers, and all of them need support in certain areas. So, what we are talking about is how to provide that support. Now, the category of the separated father is the one that I've done a lot of research on. I've got a lot of information that is not just for that category, but can be used for all three of them. But sometimes the different categories require different types of support. So we're going to figure it out and we'll keep you posted as we come up with different solutions. So the next thing I want to share with you is that I have been a part of a local group called GN&I. They are supporting youth in the areas of entertainment, acting, and athletics. They share with them ways to address those careers in a manner that is respectful and safe by connecting them to professionals who cover everything from financial planning to choosing the right people for their support system. They're having an event this year, and it's a fundraiser. And I want to share with you information about that event because it's happening on the 20th of June, and it's going to be held in Las Vegas at the Hilton Garden Inn from 2 to 5 p.m. the day before Father's Day. This information will be available in the notes of our social media posts. I recommend you go and support. I think it's a worthy event, and you should take the time to check it out. This leads to what I'm going to talk to you about this week. There are a lot of people that's sharing a lot of information. A lot of people are trying to get you to support something, convince you to do something, just a lot of different things that you're exposed to. And sometimes it's a little difficult to determine what's legit and what's a scam. Sometimes we make the assumption that everybody that we are not familiar with is trying to scam us in some way. And that's not necessarily a great stance to take. How do you really figure out what's legitimate and what's not? That's not an easy question to answer. You have to do your due diligence, of course. But in doing that, you have to do it with the right attitude. We can't automatically assume that a person is negative just because we may not be familiar with them. What they're sharing could be helpful, but we have to be open to hear the message and then make the determination. And that takes what I call discernment, that internal thing that we all have inside of us that says, this doesn't sound right or that makes sense. Now, just because it makes sense doesn't necessarily mean that it is legitimate, but it's something that we can use to help us make those decisions. Be open to different ideas, be open to different frames of thought. Just because you're not familiar with something doesn't necessarily mean it's not legitimate. Depending upon what the message is, you have to ask yourself, is this a message that I can support? Do I believe in what they're trying to do? If they're not doing something that you really are behind, then you have your answer. But if they are doing something that you feel is legitimate or worthy, then you have to decide, what am I going to do to help the situation? Or am I going to give my support? That determination is all on you. You have to make that decision for yourself. Nobody can make it for you. But when you make that decision, just make it with the right mindset. Now, I spoke about what the brothers of Las Vegas are starting to embrace with fatherhood. And for those of you who've been listening, you know I've revised the Fatherhood Essential course that I developed a few years back. And it's available at a discount price between now and Father's Day. Now, this course is for that category of men who have been separated and are trying to work through those challenges. Now, that is not the only category that this course can help with, but the course was developed for that category. So we deal with a lot of topics that the other categories may not have in their lives. I recommend that, especially in that category, you take advantage of the discount, the information, and it's going to be very helpful, basically life changing. Well, that's all I have for this week. This is Lance Dixon signing out.